Hello, everybody. Buddy Webb, Midland, Texas. Got a little video today. It started with a comment on a video I just posted last night, on my YouTube channel, Buddy Webb, and it's under this one right here. That's called Christmas Eve, 1993. And you can imagine 27 years ago, it was Christmas at Mom and Dad's house, and uh, both mom and dad are gone now, and that's going to be in this video I'm making today. I'm going to show you here. We're not gonna watch this video, but you can see this is Christmas Eve. Here's my son Josh. This is my mom. That's my dad. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and stop there. Anyways, one of the comments I got right here was from I Know Much. It says, I'm genuinely curious to when you started to experience all this stuff. I read the description. Did anything start to happen to you before your mother's passing, if you can remember? And I think that's a fair question. I try to answer any kind of legitimate questions, people that are interested, that have followed the story, and are nice. I quickly block anybody that's rude, any kind of insults, any kind of weird, comments or anything like that. They're gone, and I actually have stalkers. I see it all the time because I block people all the time. And, they created their Facebook account 2 days ago, and over and over and over again. It's the same person out there. They might have been the one that were at the pedophile parties. They might be one of the secret police I paid to get identified. Might be the killer of Mike Lawn, the ones that killed the little girl, and 2010, whatever. But anyway, they're constantly stalking me, and they're creating one fake ID after another fake ID, etc. But my point here is, it seemed like a legitimate question, and so I made a long answer, and I said, timing is an important question, and thanks for asking. And I spent a lot of time answering that question. And as you said, they said they read this intro. And I think that's important here. And so I'm going to go over the introduction here. And you should always read this, because I put a lot of stuff in that. A lot of times, it's in the videos. It's it. But here I said, this was at Mom and Dad's house in Hobbs, New Mexico. Mom died on December 7th, 2011, the month before I was ambushed and shot inside my home with my phone lines cut. And there are still unanswered questions about her death. I wondered if she knew something about my home being rigged here in Midland, or if she was going to say something. Death of my mom, I have a video on that, okay, and with a link. And Dad died on March 20th, 2017. He married Ann Callaway after Mom died, my first mother-in-law, and quit talking to me for the last 3 years of his life without any explanation. But it seemed obvious that he knew something about the nonstop crimes being committed against me. Don and Ann Callaway, my first in-laws, built the home that I lived in back in Hobbs, and I've looked back and suspected that home was rigged with hidden underground access like this one in Midland and many others across the country. I have a video called I Have a Son with My Stepsister, and I'm going to explain that more here in a minute. I transferred to Hobbs from Orla, Texas in 1992, and I worked for Phillips Petroleum. Then it was GPM, DCP, major oil company, or gas company. I transferred to Hobbs from Orla in 1992. I was living in a gas camp out there, and I bought the home at 7611 Rolling Meadows, Hobbs, New Mexico. I am from Hobbs, New Mexico, a southeast corner of New Mexico. I lived there for 16 years until 2008, when I transferred to this home here in Midland with my company. The ex-wife here told me that I was chosen to buy this home here in Midland, which told me that the crimes against me started before I moved to Midland. And looking back, I now believe that home was rigged like this one. That also meant that the previous homeowner, Mike Lawhon, was chosen to die, because he died like a couple of weeks before I moved into town. It was built by my first in-laws, the Callaways, Ann and Don. They also built the one next door to it, and it's very likely a tunnel was in between them two homes. After Mom died and I was then shot, Dad married Ann Callaway. I suspect that my dad knew that that home in Hobbs was rigged, without telling me. And I have a video called Freaking Attic, okay, based on what Cindy had said. Anyway, I copied and pasted that, this reply back to that question, and I posted it on my Facebook here, and a question about time in here. I know much. I'm genuinely curious, etc. Okay. And so I put a link to a video called During the Commission of a Felony. And that video is telling facts about the day that I was shot, January 28, 2012. And then later, many years later, 7 years later, I get the police report, and I found out that there was 5 police officers that were at or inside my home, and they wasn't seen arriving on the security cameras that saw 2 other officers arriving 4 minutes earlier. And all my other doors were secured, so that's how I knew that they had came in from the now removed underground trapdoor entrance from where I was shot. It looks like it might have been police that shot me, and that would explain this just unprecedented public corruption in the face of so much evidence, and is that it was police that were under my home that tried to murder me in my home. And this here, it is the what do you call it? The cover picture here. Stop publicizing their business. And a guy from Lovington, New Mexico, near Hobbs, he wrote me on Facebook, Shannon Jeter, and he's saying, buddy, cops can kill you and get away with it. Stop publicizing their business, and you go buy you another home. Well, good luck finding a DA to file any charges on a cop. And so basically, he's telling me it was cops that tried to murder me, and that's what I'm saying, and that's what it looks like based on the evidence found, and he's basically saying, if you don't sell your home, they're going to murder you. That's how I read it. I'm sure that's how you read it too, right? And then he also goes, there's bigger people than you can ever perceive involved. And I believe that too. The ex-wife had told me a lot of people were in here when I shot, obviously in the underground home in the backyard. And I think this is important people, wealthy people, old company owners, etc. Okay. And then the other thing he puts here at the bottom, which is real interesting to highlight, is this: keep your doors locked and tie wired shut. It will slow them down. So he makes a point about tie wire on my doors, and I think that's we're going to hear more about that in a minute. But I had trapped a burglar on the day of the murder attempt in my guest bathroom with tie wire. Okay, and he made a big point of it. And these police that it looks like tried to murder me in my home might have used this trapped burglar as like some kind of excuse to try to murder me in my home, instead of arresting the burglar that was breaking in my house, which, that's what a good police officer would have done, right? But these were corrupt police under my home. And, they're probably involved in human trafficking, sex trafficking, etc. And maybe a sex party was going on under my home. All that. That's some maybes. But all we know is there's police in my home, and they wasn't seen arriving. Okay, that's a fact. We know that for a fact. And so I'm going to go comment after comment with the pictures, and that way I don't read the whole long thing and lay it out here on the timing. And I tried to I'll probably name this the timeline, and to kind of give you that I think this started long time ago. Crime's been committed against me since at least 1992, and so you can imagine that's 28 years, that's 30 years. I mean that is really incredible. But keep in mind that homeowners all across the country reported people in the attic, right? And so it took a long time to rig all them homes. There's a massive organized crime, public corruption, crime ring network going on here. Okay. So March, this is timeline. Remember, he asked me about, the timing and mom died and all that. So that's what we're going over. March 1992. I transferred from Orla, Texas to Hobbs, New Mexico, and I bought the Hobbs Home on Rolling Meadows Street. Tami Callaway's first husband, Mike Burns, was a realtor and found it for me. Tami is my first ex-wife and the mother of my son, Josh. Her parents, Don and Ann Callaway, built that home and the one next to it, which they used to live in. I didn't suspect that home was rigged with hidden access until several years after I was ambushed and shot here in Midland in 2012. And this is Google Maps, went up there and pulled up Rolling Meadows, Hobbs, New Mexico, and we're looking down from above, and what I'm showing is Here's the home that I lived in. They're right there, 76 Rolling Meadows. That's the one I owned. Lived there 16 years, and that's the home that Callaways built. And then right here next to it was the other home that Ann and Don Callaway, my first in-laws, built. So they've been, and I'm suspecting there was a tunnel that went, that went or goes between the two homes, and this home was rigged like this one in Midland, like the many others where people reported in the attic. Okay. And just a side story, after I was ambushed and shot, it was my dad's first one, says, yeah, but people are kind of calling you crazy because you were saying people in your attic in your Hobbs home. And I'm like, what? I didn't say people in the attic of my Hobbs home. I didn't know what he was talking about. That's in one of these videos I'm going to show you here, show you a link to here in a minute. And I didn't suspect anybody. But what had happened was my daughter had recognized that a light was on in my attic back in 2002. And I hadn't been up there, and I was going through a divorce with Cindy, another ex-wife at the time, and I suspected Cindy was sneaking in my home and was getting in the attic. And then I later caught Cindy sneaking in my house. She accidentally left her voice on the answering machine. So I was 100% sure I had evidence that Cindy was in my house. All them years I suspected it was Cindy that had gotten in the attic, while we were going through that divorce, And then it wasn't until 2018, after I'm shot and find out about all these other homes, that I asked Cindy online on Facebook, and she's no longer alive. She died right after that. But she writes back and goes, I didn't get in your freaking attic. Well, she didn't get my freaking attic. Then somebody else got in my freaking attic. I have a video called Freaking Attic, okay? And you ought to watch that. I don't have a link on it here, but that's the story there. And so that, I lived there 16 years, and I'm thinking that home was rigged all that time, and I never knew it. Okay. So March 2002, 10 years later, I called the police at the Hobbs home after finding a message on my answering machine that Cindy Barton had left when I was going through a divorce with her. My daughter had noticed a light on in the attic a few weeks before this murder, for this proof of her entering my home, so I suspected it was Cindy that had been sneaking into my home, and it was her that was in the attic. She told me before she died in 2018 that she didn't get in the freaking attic. If it wasn't Cindy, then it was somebody else, and that's when I started suspecting the Hobbs home had been rigged all of that time without me knowing it. Okay, so here's a picture of Cindy, and this is when we got married in '94, and here's the screenshot in 2018. We were divorced by this time, and and I write her on Facebook in the public. So did you get up in the attic or not? It's proving you were in my home, because she left her voice on the answer machine. And she wrote back and says, I never got in the freaking attic. Okay. And as I said, if Cindy didn't get in the freaking attic, somebody else did. And that's what told me that home was rigged. And then I'm looking back and going, that home was built by the Callaways, them first in-laws. Okay. So here at timeline, November 2008. My company offered me a transfer to Midland, Texas. Dane Wiggin, and I suspect Dane also knows something about these crimes. There's another story with that. I transferred to Midland from Hobbs, New Mexico in 2008, and the young previous owner of my home, Mike Lawhon, died shortly after I looked at it. The ex-wife from here later told me that I was chosen to buy this home, which I believe to be true. I've since found evidence which has convinced me that Mike was murdered here and taken to Fort Worth. That's a whole nother story. I have several videos on that, on the suspected murder of Mike Lawhon, 27 years old. And basically, my neighbor Marilyn DeLuigi told me twice Mike died in this house, but his death certificate says he died in Fort Worth. And the Odessa American posted a death notice saying that he died in Fort Worth, and 4 days later they posted a second death notice, changed the location of death, say he died at his residence. And so because of that, and because I know this home was rigged, and then it also happened the week before the 2008 oil show started, which seems important, and because it's believed there's an underground home in the backyard that was hosting the oil show parties, and I believe Mike was murdered here and taken to Fort Worth. Okay, and it was a cover-up. So what's going on with Mike Lawhon? But I just found this out within the last year or two. A friend of Mike's friends, she writes me and says Mike was telling his friends he felt like people were in his house. He knew where people were in this house. So Mike was reporting these burglaries, here. And the other thing was that the next door neighbor there, the one that had the suspected tunnel entrance in the backyard, he told me one time, he said the last 4 people lived in that house didn't live there long. I didn't think it's funny. The last one's dead. I crawled out on my hands and knees, after surviving a home invasion premeditated murder attempt. Okay. So here we are in October 2010. Okay. That's 2 years later. Angie, my friend Angie McGee Hurley, okay, told me about a young girl that was murdered at a party she was at going on during the Permian Basin International Oil Show. That's a big convention. Tens of thousands of people come to town, and these parties are famous, put on by wealthy oil men, drinking, drugs, prostitution, etc. Anyway, Angie was leaving my home and at the party in 5 minutes. I know that because we were talking on the phone as she drove from here to there. Okay, I believe these were going on in the underground homes that multiple people have said were here, and maybe the one that looks like it's in my backyard on Google Maps. The remains of a 14 to 21-year-old girl were found outside of Midland in 2013. I have a whole list of people that said that these underground homes are here. One of them, I secretly recorded a sheriff candidate, Joe Lozano, earlier this year, telling me that our last sheriff, the late Gary Painter, used to hang out in these underground homes there, and I had contacted Painter multiple times about the crimes with evidence, and he ignored it. And so I believe that true. And he was possibly, Angie had also told me there were police at that. She was afraid to report that murder and said high-level police were at that party. And so I believe that Painter was there, and probably the secret police were also there at the party. So maybe these secret police, remember what Jeter said? He says, cops can kill you and get away with it. Stop publicizing their business. And so that's what made me wonder if their business is human trafficking, sex trafficking, little girls, you're going to prostitute for us, we're going to make money off you, or we're going to kill you, and don't think you can report it because we're the police or whatever. And of course, I'm a lifelong supporter of police, but I'm not so naive to think that we don't have police corruption. We do. That's all there is to it. Anybody says different's lying to you. November 2010. This is right after, remember that was in October 2010. And November 2010, I reported my first burglary to the police. But this wasn't in my attic. I just noticed that somebody had been inside my home. The police wrote possible 1096 on that first call for a valid crime when I was a 27-year company man, homeowner, and granddad. Falsely claiming that the crime victim is crazy seems to be modus operandi for the crime ring. Okay, and I'm going to show you the first police report. My first call, there's the number right there, and here's the date on it, on November 9th, 2010. Okay, and it, on this call, I didn't think that somebody was in an attic. I didn't even think about that. Tunnels, nothing like that. I just come home. I recognized somebody had been inside my house, the living area of my house. I found the sliding glass door open. Okay, these were the first two officers, A. Corson and Stephen Truex. Okay, and but what I'm making a point of is here, complainant me, possible 1096. Okay, so they were already, laying the groundwork for these life-destroying lies where they intentionally and falsely claim that the crime victim, me, I'm home and minding my own business, reports a crime to them, and they're destroying the crime victim's life to cover up the crimes, right? Because that's kind of absurd to call me 1096 when I'm a 27-year company man, granddad, and homeowner, and I had a burglary, and I called the police. That doesn't make me crazy. It makes me the victim of a crime. And now it's real clear, it was a valid burglary. Okay, January 2011, 2 months later, I made my second call for a burglary 2 months later in January 2011. This was the first time that I heard somebody in the attic. Crimes that still go on to this day, as I believe they're protecting the underground home in the backyard where the young girl was murdered at during the 2010 oil show party. I now believe these crimes were going on before I got here. I found out that Mike Lawhon, the previous homeowner, was telling his friends about people breaking this home, and my next door neighbor told me once the last 4 people that lived in your home didn't live there long. Ha 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 ha. And that is the neighbor that had the suspected tunnel entrance backyard. Also the one that harassed me recently. I have a video called Harassing the Neighbor. You can check that out and you'd see him. And I also believe there are many other homes rigged like this one. I was shot with burglar alarms going off in the attic, and now I've identified homeowners all over Midland, Odessa, Texas, and many other states reporting people in the attic. That's felony burglary. This should have been a national news story for a long time. And that shows you the level of cover-up that's going on for this widespread racketeering. Because, it's burglary, theft, murder. They're destroying innocent people's lives is what's going on here. And, and I think it connects back to human trafficking, sex trafficking. Very, very profitable. maybe illegal immigration, And so there's the date, and it's January 8th, 2011, and can hear noises in the attic, and here I was in the closet. Complainant is hiding in his closet with a gun, and a shotgun, and I was scared to death. Here I was under a home invasion. I'm not used to people breaking into my house at that time. I was rattled, with these criminals, and of course this was 14 months. This was a year before I was ambushed and shot with burglar alarms going off in my attic. These are the officers, A. Corson, Michael Chandler, and Bradley Alexander. And I make a point that Michael Chandler was the husband of April Chandler. She was one of the secret police that had been caught on camera here on the night that I was shot. And she was seen next to Rosie Rodriguez planting my stolen cell phone behind my nightstand. She's the one that made up the lie and called me a paranoid schizophrenic when I was cleared by mental health at the hospital. I was the victim of a home invasion and a murder attempt, and she makes up this life-destroying lie. And I hear her on the police scanner all the time. She was caught lying on police reports, tampering with evidence. She's the one that found the voice recorder that I told that Rosie Rodriguez was proof. Proof's at my home. Proof's at my home. And they went and stole the proof, and April Chandler's the one that found my voice recorder, and it didn't get checked into evidence till 2 years later, And after I made a big point of the Midland police stealing evidence to cover up a murder attempt. Here we go. Complainant is 1096. That's what I'm saying. And it's not just me, because I've recorded all these other homeowners on my scanner reporting people in the attic, and multiple times. A lot of times it's the dispatcher that is already calling the homeowner 1096 or calling them crazy, because it's modus operandi. That's how they get away with rigging these homes for burglary, theft, and murder. And we have a significant police corruption problem. Obviously, took 6 years to get them secret police identified. The first time in the history of America where a crime victim offered a reward to identify police, and not a news story in the nation. That's how big this is, and that's how big the cover-up is, and the press, and there being a party to these crimes against the citizens. Okay, definitely the press is an enemy of the citizens, and they're working with this organized crime unit that's rigging homes for burglary, theft, and murder. Okay, timeline: December 2011. Okay, my mom died. That's later that year. So I reported my first, or my second burglary in January 2011. Okay, I ended up getting married just a few months before that to the wife here. Okay, ex-wife. And then December 7th, mom died on December 7th, 2011, not long after I married the ex-wife. We separated a couple of weeks later, and had only been married for 3 months. I long suspected that she knows something about what really happened to my mom, and her former boyfriend, Arthur Welch, had said that he believes she was involved in the shooting, and that she had threatened to have him killed too. I have a document. He said that. He told me that in 2012, and then he posted it on his Facebook just a few months ago. He said he overheard her planning my murder to steal life insurance with her corrupt police friends, and come to find out her lifelong grade school friend was Rosie Rodriguez. Okay, one of the main secret police. I figured out that I'd been lied about what happened when mom died, and I reported this to the Hobbs Police and the Lee County Sheriff's Department. A few weeks later, interestingly, Sheriff Rod Kaufman supposedly committed suicide 2 days before mom died, and I wondered if that was a murder and had a connection to mom's death and the crime ring. And so, and of course, I have no proof of that. I knew Rod Kaufman, Sheriff Kaufman. Now, this is all in Hobbs, New Mexico, 100 miles from here, and we're all sitting here, we all work in the same oil field, basically. And, I'm in Midland, and this is in Hobbs, across the state line, but it's only an hour and a half over there, okay? And so here, Rod Kaufman, the sheriff, supposedly commits suicide, right? I knew him, and, he was my age. I taught a computer networking course at the college in Hobbs, and he was in my class, and this guy, he was like Mr. America type, Boy Scout, I think he did everything right in his whole life. That's kind of how I looked at him, super nice guy. I just could not see him, committing suicide, the sheriff, right? But it just, the timing was so odd that 2 days before mom dies with unanswered questions, that Sheriff Kaufman dies, and so maybe, these people in this crime ring are connected to his death as well as my mom. I don't know that. But what happened is I figured out my brother lied to me. There's a longest story. I got a video on that called The Death of My Mom. And, and I contacted the police and I contacted the sheriff. But of course, Kaufman's gone by that time. It was Mark, whatever. Hargrove, I think, was the interim sheriff, when this happened 2 days later when Mom died. And they're like, I don't see nothing wrong with that. No, and that was it, but I was sure that I had been lied to about what happened when Mom died. I didn't think, my family had anything to do with that. I mean, we were a close, loving family, as you saw in the Christmas video, right? But I think they know something. I felt like they've been threatened, and of course this crime ring, significant police corruption and rigging homes across America. Okay. And so that was in December. Well, I separated from that ex-wife just a few weeks later. Actually, it was right before New Year's on December 30th. And, I was done. There's more stories in there. But January, right after the first of the year, about January 4th or 5th, my son comes down from Amarillo, and Don and Ann lived in Amarillo at the time. And while Josh was here, Don Callaway dies. Well, that's the first father-in-law, and that's who built my Hobbs home. Okay, and it just seemed odd. And I tell you what, my son hasn't been back to my house since then. And I can remember one conversation while he was here during that short amount of time. He says something like, Dad, it just doesn't make sense, somebody going underground and then coming back over here via tunnel. And then he looks at his little brother, Preston Corgle, that lived here in Midland, and he starts giggling, And, of course, that's my son. I raised him. I know him, He knows something about the tunnels under this house, And I think that's probably why he hasn't been back here, and that's why he doesn't talk to me anymore, I think maybe he knew about that Hobbs home was being rigged, and it might have been rigged by his grandparents, Ann and Don Callaway. But then anyway, he knocks on my door that next morning with tears in his eyes. And Don died, and so he had to go, and so here's a picture of Don. Once again, I wondered if this, if there wasn't more to this, if something didn't happen to Don, if he wasn't murdered too by the people in this crime ring, and just because the timing was odd. So Mom dies and Don dies, and then, it's just here that was January 4th or 5th, and here January 28th, I'm ambushed and shot with my phone lines cut and burglar alarms going off in my attic, and here I am crawling out. The reason I crawled out is because my phone lines were cut. That was my only chance of survival. They tried to murder me in my home. And that ex-wife had taken my life insurance books just a few weeks later, or a few weeks before when we separated. And then she brought them back about a week before I was shot, and some people were wondering if she didn't bring them back, so she didn't have possession when I accidentally died, because her friend Rosie Rodriguez was going to come in and roll my murder in accident, and there was an accidental death policy that was going to add $500,000. And then I go look at Arthur Welch said that he overheard her planning my murder with her corrupt police friends to steal life insurance, and so that's some of the backstory to that. Okay, fast forward in here, and that was in January 2012. Well, and then mysteriously here, my family, I'm like, I need your help, Here's what's going on. I ain't helping you, and then my dad, I'll just read this. My dad dies in March 2017. A couple of years earlier, my dad married Ann Callaway, my first mother-in-law, and the builder of my Hobbs home. That is why I have a son, Josh, with my stepsister, who's Tami. But of course, she only became my stepsister 30 plus years later, Ann Callaway told me that I wasn't invited to the wedding with my dad because of her, and he quit talking to me for the last 3 years of his life. Looking back, I've guessed that he knew about my Hobbs home being rigged. And there were certain things he said. I remember we had a conversation about the trapped burglar that was in the bathroom on the day of the murder attempt. And I think them police might have used that as an excuse to try to murder me. And Dad gets upset. Yeah, but you had the doors tie wired shut. You had the safety off on your gun. And it was like blaming me because these killers broke into my home, right, with guns. I'm going, and I replied right back, I was under a home invasion. Because everybody has a right to live safe inside their home. I'd been reporting these burglaries to my home, for 14 months by the time they cut my phone lines and shot me. So this is a picture from my dad's wedding to Ann Callaway, my first mother-in-law and the builder of my Hobbs home. And there's my brother. Okay. And so my brother also said, I ain't helping you. Okay. And so, March 2017, my dad dies. Did I read that right? Yeah, I did. Looks like I have the same thing twice. Okay. And so, anyway, here's a picture of my dad, and I love my dad, and you know, there's a lot of unanswered questions here. I don't know what's going on. I put the links to the videos here, and there's a lot more evidence, a lot more stories. This one, I have a son with my stepsister, and that one pissed off Ann Callaway. I mean, that pissed her off, man, because it's so Jerry Springer sounding. But, the truth is, she married my dad, and that's when my first ex-wife becomes my, the mother of my child becomes my stepsister. But it didn't happen until 30 years later when, mom dies, in December, and then Don dies the next month in January, and then I'm shot a few weeks later, and then dad marries mom. You can see how I might have some questions about that, and they quit talking to me. The death of my mom, and that's it. There's a lot of information in this, and specifics of what happened when my mom died. I love my mom to death, and I want the truth, because that's my mom. She was the sweetest and kindest person that you ever met. Okay, and then during the commission of a felony, the evidence that I found says this video talks about the day I was ambushed and shot with my phone on his gut, and I later found out that the burglar was trapped in my guest bathroom. Based on evidence found, it looks like some police were under my home and had entered via the now removed trap door from where I'd been shot, which told me those police were working with the burglars that have been reporting to them. That's the irony. Obviously, they were also connected with the underground oil show parties, and so if we've ever, come up with some good police, then and this is going to, I believe, solve multiple murders, and hopefully that is happening. I've been sending, I sent that email yesterday to Sheriff Kreiner and the Texas Rangers. I can show you that here, and before I close this out, there's that Christmas Eve. If you, I do this because not everybody has Facebook, and so I like the way how it lays out, though. Okay, email to multiple law enforcement. This is what I sent to Sheriff Kreiner yesterday and the Texas Rangers, the Odessa Crime Stoppers, the Scurry County DA's office, and then copied in News West 9, CBS 7, KMID, Midland Reporter Telegram, and the Odessa American. But I also wanted to share it on my Facebook so the public could see the huge amount of evidence now in the hands of our law enforcement. The child killers that murdered Haley Dunn, she's the famous missing murdered child from Colorado City, she was national news, are still free, and some are obviously a danger to all of us. Okay, obviously danger all of our children and grandchildren. So I hope this helps stop them. Share this with your friends, and there's just a copy and pasted the email. Okay, I'm gonna read this one to you, and we're gonna close this out. Sheriff Kreiner. Erica Morse is a private investigator who's been working for Clint Dunn, the father of Haley. As you can see from her recent personal attacks against me, that something is very fishy, as there's no way that she can be that stupid. She called me crazy. I suspected that she's been intentionally trying to spread misinformation and mislead in the investigation of the murder of Haley Dunn for some reason. Okay, and supposedly she's working on it, but she's been trying to discredit these dozen witnesses that said they were there and said Haley was killed in Odessa. I've documented a dozen people saying that Haley was killed in Odessa by recorded conversations or screenshots, which includes many details, including names, places, things she was wearing, places she was buried, even eyewitness to describe Haley's murder to me. The only thing that Erica Morse can do is to refute this huge amount of evidence is by calling me crazy. Question mark, question mark, question mark. It's well known those lies about me don't work anymore. They were used to try to cover up the capital murder attempt of my life, where I was shot by somebody under my home with burglar alarms going in my attic. Now proof has been found showing that I wasn't shot with my gun. Proof of many other homeowners reporting people in the attic. Proof of many people saying that tunnels, underground homes are here, with one of them being a recent candidate for sheriff. Okay, the crimes against me are crazy, but it's exceedingly clear that I'm not. So we should be asking Erica why Erica is doing this. Okay. I saw a Facebook post a while back where Becca Blackman Miles said that Erica was a swinger, and I've already suspected that swingers were having parties in the underground homes here. So I wondered if that was the reason that she's doing that. So I have a video called Underground Sex Parties. I suspected that Haley's mom, Billy Dunn, may have been at the underground old show parties in 2010 where my friend Angie McGee Hurley was at, and the other young girl was murdered there. I found out that Billy was a stripper at the time, and it makes sense that all the strippers were working at the parties during the oil show. I've noticed that Billy being a stripper around the time Haley went missing has been kept a secret for some odd reason. One woman told me that Billy had been taking Haley to the strip clubs with her, so maybe she also took her to the oil show parties. Another guy told me that Clint, the father, was pimping out Haley to his oil field friends for $500 each. He was specific about the amount. Maybe this was going on in the underground oil show parties. That happened just 2 months before she was reported missing. I won't be surprised to find out that many of the swingers in the area were also at those underground parties, but I have no confirmation about Erica being a swinger. Just a screenshot from Becca, who said that on Facebook. Now, if Clint, the father, Billy, the mother, Haley, the 13-year-old murdered child, and Erica, the private investigators, is supposedly trying to find out what happened, were at the underground oil show parties, then I can see why they wouldn't want anybody to find that out, which may explain the baseless and cruel attacks against me. Okay. Last year, a podcast was made by Haley's dad, Clint, and Erica, who said, and this is Erica talking, and I put a link to this. I got a copy of it. And there was just a lot of deviancy. There was definitely a lot of drug abuse going on under that house, or under that roof. I made a video about this called 40 and Slip, wondered if she was talking about the underground parties under my house, under my home. And, that Becca said she was a meth user, in that one deal. I don't have confirmation on that. The woman that is secretly recorded telling me there were 4 3-bedroom underground homes here said they were having pedophile parties down there. Well, that fits right in with this theory, okay? In addition, I was reminded that the Haley Dunn case was in the hands of a Scurry County DA investigator named John McDaniels, and I knew that there was a John McDaniels who worked for the Midland Sheriff's Office back in 2013. I wondered if it was the same guy, and if so, he knew about the underground homes, which Joe Lozano, the sheriff candidate, said that Painter, the former sheriff, used to hang out in. As seen in the other video below, I spoke with him back in June 2019. I'll be glad to answer any questions that you have, and I hope this helps, stop these child killers are still free, okay? And links to all these videos, Midland Underground Sex Parties, Talk to Scurry County DA office, Haley Dunn timeline, another tale of why, where, another Haley Dunn. The drug counselor, that's about Christy Otts on the Haley Dunn murder. Haley Dunn killed over family drug debt, and $1 million underground facilities, people in the attic, and then the same one again. Okay, and so and then here just one comment. Scott Pickey, that he's the direct. He wrote me the other day. He said, "I'm the director for news for CBS 7," and so I copied CBS 7 on this email here. Right, seems like major news that they'd want to report on. Right, and I got this message that I was blocked by CBS 7. I'll tell you what's interesting. I know CBS 7. I don't know if it is now, but used to who run that was John Bushman. And Christy Otts, the drug rehab counselor, said that it was Brett Bushman that had confessed to the, being, connected with the murder of Haley Dunn. I got screenshots on that. And the long question has been asked if John Bushman was related to Brett Bushman, and if that's why CBS 7 keeps, it is blocked my emails and isn't reporting this huge news story. I don't know that. I just know that I was blocked. And so anyway, I thought y'all found that interesting. Buddy Webb, Midland, Texas. Share this story.